But this brought me up to my idea of how badly we need to make Son-in-Law the sequel, Son-in-Law Part 2, Father-in-Law, where they have a kid. Like, how good of a premise is that?
Joe, you can't remake all the Pauly Shore movies.
But I want to.
Welcome back, everybody, to S1E1, the show where each week we pick a different sitcom, watch just the first televised episode, and forgetting anything we might know about the future run of that show, rate it and decide if that's a show we want to greenlight or cancel. This week we're going to be talking about MASH. MASH went 256 episodes over 11 seasons on CBS. Today we're going to be talking about episode 1, which was called Pilot, originally airing September 17th, 1972. So to get things started, I'm Jay Gags. With me, as always, the boys, Gordo, Nick, Berg, and Joe. What's going on, guys?
Hello.
Hello.
If you don't move, I'm going to have to cut around your B cups. Okay, so if you thought WKRP in Cincinnati had some weird sexual harassment in the workplace, get ready for MASH.
70s.
We talk about a show that has both a subplot about how they're trying to help a little Korean kid get into college while at the same time calls their black friend and colleague a spear chucker. Are you fucking kidding me? This was wild.
This show certainly got lost in time, or stuck in time, because this would not make it today.
Oh, none of this works. But there are some interesting things and some fun things to talk about. Jay, you just mentioned this one 11 seasons. This went almost 4 times as long as the war the show is about, which is also pretty crazy.
And then Firefly doesn't get a full season. More than a full season, I mean.
This went 250 episodes longer than Caveman got. Can you believe it?
I can, yeah.
I can. It deserves it more than Caveman.
Did you know that, oh yeah, Joe just said that is longer than the war.
he was already, he's like, I can't wait.
Yeah.
Starting off strong, Cordy.
Here's the thing about that. The thing about that is, if you just take into account the amount of episodes versus how long the Korean War actually was, which was 3 years, I think they said?
3, yeah.
Yeah.
It just means that every episode spans about 4.5 days. So it's not a day per episode. So it's just almost a week per episode. Yeah.
The only problem with that is that 5 years, you might look the same. 11 years, you look noticeably different. You know what I mean? So from the beginning of the show to the final season, I would like to kind of watch the final episode after we do the...
This opens us up to after MASH.
And Walter, pardon me, W.A.L.T.E.E.R. There are so many spinoffs to this.
Walter?
Yeah, Walter was one from the mid-'80s that was, I think, Radar's show.
You say opened up, like that's a good thing.
Didn't even get past the pilot, that one, though, I don't think.
Well, that's one pilot, so it's there for us.
The only thing I could think of about the overarching theme behind this show is how weird it would be to do it now. You know what I mean? Isn't it strange that there's a comedy based around just soldiers getting shot and blown up? You know what I mean? It's just weird.
This is a different type of show, though, because it's a comedy, but it's also a drama, too. It loosely passes as a sitcom, because it's not like a full sitcom.
Yeah.
So fun fact about this show, though, as a kid, I didn't know if it was a comedy or not. And now after seeing it as an adult, I don't know if it's a comedy or not. I never got more than 10 minutes past the intro, and it's because the intro really sucked my energy out. And it's such, I know it's an iconic song, but I can't stand it. It's so boring, and it makes the show feel boring to me.
Well, starting a comedy with a song called Suicide is Painless really leads you down a road of, I don't know where this is going.
Yeah, and they purposely use the instrumental version of this, because I remember I sang karaoke once with 2 of our friends, and we ended the night on Suicide is Painless, and we made the whole bar depressed.
Oh, get right out of town.
See,
they weren't all up in
big surprise there.
Say.
And if you want to go on to our first of what will probably be many tangents of this episode,
there will be a lot.
One of the most notable karaoke experiences I've ever seen was when we went on our road trip, Ferg and Philly. decides that he wants to get up and do the Humpty Dance, which I was unaware that at 21 years old at the time, he knew every word to that song without the aid of the screen. And you would have thought it was like one of those movies like Euro Trip or Road Trip, like kind of one of those ensemble movies where everybody in the bar like got up and started dancing like while Ferg is rapping the Humpty Dance to everybody. It
You know what's funny?
so surreal.
I don't even kind of remember that.
You don't remember that?
Not at all. Even a little bit do I remember that.
Well, if you're in a bar where everyone was drunk enough to dance with Ferg to the Humpty Dance, I imagine that maybe there's some scenes missing.
Yeah, probably.
That is burned into my brain forever.
One thing before we start this real quick, I wanted to bring up, because it just came up when we were talking about it a second ago, but this is a weird golden age of war comedy. Like, because there's this.
I thought you were going to say it was a golden age of war. And I was like,
No, we're in a forever war right now. It'll never not be a golden age of war. But there's this, there's Hogan's Heroes, there's CPO Sharky, there's McHale's Navy, there is Rat Patrol, which is kind of more of an action show, but had comedy in it. Like, there was tons of different war comedies on TV, and all I can think about MASH, and because they probably smartly at the time put it as the Korean War and not the current very depressing war America was in, was as a way to sort of be like, war's not all bad, right guys? Look how funny Alan Alda is.
It's fun. Sign up.
Imagine being like a 18-year-old kid out of school. I can't wait to go to war. I'm going to get so much tail.
Like, I got drafted. I hope I meet my Trapper John. Like, yeah, that's not gonna happen.
Also, I do want to mention, so we are purposely doing the show now because it kind of lines up with Memorial Day, so we wanted to do something that was somewhat related for that. But Gorda, you're the one who wanted to do the show. It just kind of, the timing lined up. Was there any particular reason you wanted to do this show to begin with?
I actually didn't know if any of you guys had. I didn't know if you guys had seen this show or not, or given it a good watch. And this is actually one of my favorite shows of all time. Like, I would watch reruns after reruns at night when I was an insomniac and could not sleep. And this was the only thing on when you got the rabbit ear TVs, because Fox Broadcasting Network would play it in syndication for like 2 or 3 hours a night.
I think it used to be on after SmackDown, like early SmackDown.
I don't remember that. I remember it being on at like from like 1 to 3.
Either way, though, definitely a syndication show of our childhood, because I've seen episodes here and there, and it was almost always at a random time because it was always on TV, right? When you didn't have cable and like a little TV in your room or something.
You know what? I'll be completely honest. This was the first time I've ever seen an episode of MASH in my life.
Really?
And I know it's a huge
Really?
show, but
That's interesting.
I don't know.
No, I'm with you. It wasn't hyperbole. I've never gotten more than 10 minutes through an episode.
I don't think I knew what kind of show it was. I think as a kid, I guess if, we talked last week doing WKRP, like we all watched Nick at Night as kids. But other than that, I didn't know anything about the show other than it was just a war show. And I'm not like a history mind, so I don't gravitate towards that kind of
Did
stuff.
this ever make it on Nick at Night?
No.
No, there was no MASH Monday.
No.
The only interesting thing I did read about was that depending on the network that this show was syndicated on, some of them played the laugh track and some of them didn't.
Really?
So depending on which one you watched, it might not have had a laugh track at all, which I thought was strange. I don't remember, because I did see
ours?
a bunch of episodes.
The one that we watched?
I don't know. I can't remember.
I wasn't
It's
paying
like,
attention enough.
This
I
it
can't
did have a
remember now,
laugh
yeah.
There
track.
was a laugh track because there was one.
Oh, the one we
time
watched.
early on.
Yeah, I meant like when we were watching it back
Oh,
then,
no.
which I'm probably in syndication. I couldn't remember. It's like Stanley's mustache. I couldn't remember if it was there or not.
They really got us with the Stanley's mustache. The first time we saw that episode, I was like, I do not know.
I knew.
Oh, really? Yeah, no, instantly. I was pretty confident.
I didn't. No, they got me.
Yeah, it got me. I was second guessing myself. Now, you asked if anybody had seen the TV show. Has anybody here seen the movie?
I have.
No.
I don't remember. I probably not.
Was that like a filmed after the run of the show thing?
It
or?
was filmed before.
Yeah, 1970. It's a huge
Oh.
movie. Robert Altman, Trapper John, and Hawkeye in the movie are Donald Sutherland and Elliot Gould.
Oh, so different people play the same
Yes.
characters.
Only one person comes back from the movie. Only, I think, Radar comes back.
It's very
Radar comes back, and so does the priest. The
Oh,
later
yeah.
priest, but not the one that's in this
That's one in
episode.
this episode, yeah.
They followed the same path as What We Do in the Shadows. Then essentially, they did a
And
movie
Trailer Park
with
Boys.
No. Well, no, the Trailer Park Boys were the same characters for the most part.
Oh, I thought you meant movie before TV show.
No, I meant a movie before the show with different characters entirely.
Oh,
which
okay.
You see a lot of those spinoffs. A lot of them didn't ever make it and would be kind of fun to do. Like, there's a Animal House TV show.
The Ferris Bueller one.
We always talk. I mean, I think we need to have a day where we tell you, like, we should do a month of this, a month of that. Like, we could logistically plan out a year's worth of episodes if we actually sat down and did all this stuff.
And if every time one of us said, like, oh, we'll do that, or coming soon on an episode and tracked it, we'd have, like, the next 5 years of episodes.
If, but, like, I just...
terrible.
A second ago, Clueless comes to mind. That was a TV show made based on a movie. That show, I don't think lasted that long, though.
I did watch it when it came out, though.
Yeah.
Instead of Paul Rudd, it was the heartthrob guy from Hey Dude.
Oh, yeah. I forgot that guy's name, but yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, Hey Dude, which we'll be covering soon.
We will be covering, spoiler alert, we will be covering Hey Dude pretty soon.
I get to finally open up that box set that I drunkenly bought at a Walmart one night.
I love that you own that.
But I guess we should get into the actual episode. So MASH, before we even get into it, so MASH is an acronym, stands for Mobile Army Surgical Hospital, which it's funny, it was just one of those things I never even thought of until doing the show right now, but it makes a lot of sense.
That's why it has the asterisks.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. It's just one of those I never thought to look it up.
Yeah, I will say I always knew it was an acronym, but I didn't know what it was. Like, I knew it was something military, but just never bothered to look it up.
They say it a couple of times. I think they say it definitely in the movie, and I think they say it throughout the series, what it is.
So the actual show starts on an army base, and the first shot we get is a few guys kind of hanging out with golf clubs, and they're shooting into a minefield, which we later find out is a minefield. We don't know at the time. It looks like they're just shooting into the woods. And we get a title screen that reads Korea 1950, and under it says 100 years ago. And I was like, I don't totally get the joke there.
So the joke actually is if you actually look at the timing of I have my cat here that's on my phone, but there is something on the Wikipedia here that basically they're one of the first units to go into Korea, because it was 100 years ago, and that's how it kind of lines up. Just so you
don't know what that means at all.
What you said did not clarify that to me at all.
He's saying their unit has been established there for 100 years.
All right, so it says, before the theme song in this episode, the words Korea, 1950, 100 years ago, appears on screen. The Korean conflict began on June 25th, 1950, when some 75,000 soldiers from the North Korean People's Armies poured across the 38th parallel into South Korea, and American troops had entered the war on South Korea's behalf in July 1950. This means that the 407th was among the first units sent to Korea.
That doesn't clarify why it's 100 years ago, though.
It's still 1950, which is 22 years ago, because they're setting the time and date. I don't get it.
I mean, I think what they're trying to say is that it feels like 100 years ago, because 1950 to 1972, you've gone from these dudes listening to jazzy swing music to post-Woodstock, 1970s, very different world.
I think the joke is that it feels like 100 years ago. They probably just could have worded it a little bit better.
I mean, I guess think of watching the kids at the beginning of like A Christmas Story, and then think of watching the kids at the end of The Wonder Years, and think how different those two worlds are for kids, right? Like that's, I think, the sort of...
I would have went with Boy Meets World.
So there is an explanation, I guess. At the very beginning, the opening shot of the pilot episode simply titled Pilot. Trapper and Hawkeye golf. As Trapper tees off, the text appears, Korea 1950, 100 years ago. 100 years, exactly when the time capsule was set to be opened. That means, in a way, the entire MASH series was somehow uncovering the trials, tears, tricks, and tribulations of the 407th a century later. The show is something that has been dug up in the year 2050, which I still don't understand. Apparently they talked about this in a much later episode, but apparently it was a show that was in a time capsule for 100 years.
Well, now I really wish that none of us had 5 minutes of trying to philosophically go through what we thought it meant. We just cut all of that out. We sound like fucking jackasses now.
Yeah, there's like a good 10 minutes of audio.
I just cut it. I just chop it.
Yeah, we'll chop that right down.
Choppy, yo, pee-pee.
But all right, so let's get past that. And so after that, there's more establishing shots of what looks like two doctors operating, but then that ends up just being like them opening a bottle. We have someone asleep outside, doing the sign of the cross. We have a man and woman reading their Bibles together at a table, and then you pan down to see that they're playing footsie barefoot.
Sexual Bibling.
And like that got like a big laugh. So we talked earlier about laugh tracks first. No, like there's a big laugh that was injected when you see them playing footsie. It was like, I don't see what's so funny about this, but all right.
But upside is if because of that, some strange dude who used to work with them went and bought them beer.
Yeah.
That died on the table like one of the MASH patients.
Like, first off, you either have to memorize everything we've talked about in past episodes or hang out with us directly to get that reference. So, like, the listener base will be so confused by hearing that, regardless of whether or not we sell that joke or not.
But if you do know, you're our number one fan.
Yeah, if anybody knows what we're talking about who listens, then beer on me or seltzer water on me.
For the price of feet pics.
So all these establishing shots, we're just kind of getting a vibe for the area, right? Their base. And you see that it's not all, there's more to being away at war than just combat. They're just kind of showing you a little bit of a day in the life, I guess.
I'd always wondered, they have the whole golf scene with the minefield. How come when, like, in minefields, there's no, like, domino effect? Like, one goes off and then they don't all go off.
Because they're far enough away from each other.
Yeah, I bet that could happen if you're bad at planting a minefield, but I think that, yeah, you're supposed to put them somewhat far apart.
Okay.
Also, kind of a bummer right now to be like, jokes about mines when there's, like, real issues with mines in the real world right now where you're like, I don't want to laugh at this.
Well, that's what I'm saying. These issues have always been, when this show came out, there was still wars going on. I just thought, I don't know. It just seems distasteful. And
imagine if you came home from Vietnam because you got your leg blown off in a mine.
Right.
And then you were like, oh, it's okay. Alan Alda's golfing. You'd be like, fuck that guy. Fuck this show. Put on what's happening.
It's funny because to do this show, again, it takes place in 1950. This episode's airing in 1972. There are plenty of people who served in this war who are now in their late 30s, early 40s that are watching this television show. Like, this could be very, a little too close to home.
Yeah, the demographic for this show is definitely people who did serve in that conflict, and that's kind of...
Didn't Alan Alda actually serve in the Korean War?
I think he's the only one that did.
Well, if he has no problem with it, then what are we complaining about?
If he's cool with it, who are we to judge?
I mean, to be fair, he was the president in Canadian Bacon. So if you play the president in a movie as good as Canadian Bacon, then I feel like you can make him a decision and we have to go by it.
Jamie Farr was there too, but I guess they were both there after the ceasefire, so there wasn't a lot of conflict going on.
Just like hanging out.
Yeah. Playing golf.
They were actually just on vacation.
They went to Korea, but it was vacation. It was just a vacation. And then, so anyways, we cut back to the guys that were playing football, and who we come to find out is Radar catches a pass, and then he kind of looks up and he just yells like, here they come, and no one else hears anything, but then you look up and moments later the helicopters start coming in. We kind of find out a little more about Radar as we go along. It's kind of a shtick. He's one step ahead, right? Whether it be with sounds
He's
or
got some sense of
intentions.
ESP, it seems.
Yeah, there's something to him.
It's kind of like in Stand By Me when he puts his head down on the train tracks and he can feel the vibrations and knows the train's coming.
Yeah, but anybody can do that.
I guess that's true.
I thought this was a very interesting transition into the intro because it goes from like the actual shots of what's going on to kind of seamlessly just interjecting the intro of the show as part of the episode instead of like a complete standalone thing you cut away to.
Which I think is only in the pilot.
Yes, this is the only time where the show opens with a scene. It always opens with that theme song from the back of Radar's head.
Okay.
In future episodes, but we don't know that. But
I do love the actual use of helicopters for shots in this, though. It really does. Like, there are some really interesting... I mean, like, I guess when you're coming off of a TV show that you're trying to make from a movie that was so well done that you kind of pull out the bag of tricks and do a little more. You mean, this doesn't feel, with some of the moves they do, like a sort of static sitcom, you know what I mean?
It's funny, too, because they shot this in, like, a state park in Malibu. So, like, there was constantly military helicopters flying around during
like actually just flying around.
Yeah.
It's one of those situations where if it happens, it doesn't take away from the shot. So they're like, go with it. It's fine.
Yeah.
Imagine, too, like, trying to immerse yourself in this world of, like, war and injury and death, and then, like, lunch! You walk out into fucking Malibu, you're in paradise. Like, that's gotta be such a weird, jarring thing.
And we get, a loudspeaker that's overhead, and you hear, attention all personnel, report immediately to admitting ward and operating room. And during this, like, you see everyone, like, running out, and they're heading that way. But they, like, there's, like, a little quick gag, too, where it's, like, off limits to male personnel, and, like, you see a female walk out, and then a guy walk out right after. And it's weird because you're seeing helicopters land and injured soldiers being taken off and put on stretchers, and like they're like placed on like these jeeps that to like escort them to the hospital. But then they have these like comedy gags like kind of placed in there, and it's a very weird tone balance that they're skirting here.
Yeah, the whole concept of the show is that's what I'm saying. Like it's just a weird it's a weird place to live for a show.
Because it's like you're watching like people come off these like they could be like have limbs blown off or at the brink of death, and it's just like, ooh, we were fucking in the females only area, and it's like, what a weird time to like just slip in like that wacky little whoop whoop, you know.
I don't know if you guys have ever seen the movie Autofocus that's about Bob Crane. It's a pretty interesting and funny movie, but it's about Bob Crane and sort of the making of Hogan's Heroes and what his life was. But at one point he's doing a press interview and the guy's like, yeah, it's really funny. It takes place in a concentration or a prisoner of war camp. And the interviewer's like, oh yeah, with the funny Nazis. And just gets pissed off and walks away. And that's all I kept thinking about in this movie. It was like, oh, the funny war TV show. Or the part in that movie where little Willem Dafoe talks about how he put his fingers in Bob Crane's asshole because it was a group grope. You guys need to watch this movie.
I'll pass.
But it's so like that, how can we not?
It was a group grope. I thought you liked it. It's so good. It's the best part of the whole movie.
And now we transition into the operating room of this mobile hospital, and we see just like a team of doctors working on someone, and one of them who's like clearly meant to be the focus of the show, you can see because the camera's like right on him, and that's Hawkeye. And he's also narrating over this footage. So like, and it's a letter that he wrote to his dad. And it says, "Dear Dad, Hawkeye here. You said I sounded a bit callous about my job in the last letter. Well, let me see if I can put it another way. At this particular mobile army hospital, we're not concerned with the ultimate reconstruction of the patient. We only care about getting the kid out of here alive enough for someone else to put on the fine touches. We work fast and we're not dainty. Because a lot of these kids who can stand 2 hours on the table can't stand 1 second more. We try to play par surgery on this course. Par is a live patient." So basically what he's telling his dad is, listen, what we're here to do is just keep them alive. It's not meant to be pretty. We're not meant to do a phenomenal job. It's just get them good enough, and then we can get them moved on later.
Yeah, it's like equal to like EMTs. Like their job is just to stabilize them, keep them alive long enough to get to the real hospital.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're and it plays out throughout the series, but they're the first stop after you get into a battle. They're the first wave that gets it. So,
yeah, they're not meant to be like, wow, and you can't even see the scar. Like, that's not their intention here.
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
They're just meant to clean it out and send you on your way.
Anybody else find it weird that he was writing a letter to his parents and he says, Hawkeye here? What?
I found it more weird that he's writing a letter to his parents and he's like 40 years old.
Well, I mean, you're in war. You're going to write to your parents because you can't do anything. You can't call or anything, but...
Does anybody else notice he sounds exactly like Howard Stern?
No.
WNBC.
Alan Alda sounds exactly like Howard Stern.
If you call that out ahead of time, I think I probably would have heard it stronger, but like now I would have to hear it again, yeah.
I'll have to rewatch it.
In my head, he just has the Groucho Marx Vlasic Pickle Stork voice. I was like, we play par
Vlasic
here.
Pickle.
Like, I just keep saying it like that, yeah. It's like, hey, you want to play doctor after this?
So we see them continue to work on a patient here, and it's shot very serious, and like when you see just the actual shots of them performing these surgeries, it's very quiet. A lot of like you just hear the instruments being used, and they slip in these jokes that are like they're not like always delivered super zany, so they're kind of dry and a little realistic even in those. And Joe's like, you said at the beginning of the episode where he says like, if you don't move, I'm gonna have to cut around your B cups. And he asks her if they want to play doctor later. And it's all while they're like, we think we're losing them, and they're doing all this stuff. And I'm like,
he's still using his like doctor talk voice too, though. He's like, I want to play doctor later.
Yeah.
Like,
do you think there was like a writer's room meeting where they're like, okay, what cup size should we use here? We don't want to say A cup because we don't want to.
Maybe they just asked her.
D would be a little too big, and that might be too big for the censors. Like, did the censors come back and be like, you can say B cup, and that's our final decision?
I think they just asked her. They're like, what are you rocking with? Then we'll just stick with that. So the dialogue seems realistic.
hey girl, what size them titties?
I mean, that's not that far from what you'd expect him to say. These people seem to be terrible monsters.
They're not monsters, man. It's a different time.
I don't know.
It's a little, I think it's a little A, a little B.
Little A, little B. I mean, it's like the fact that it's like the U.S. being like, we know you were Nazis, but you're also really good rocket scientists, and we want to go to the moon. So why don't you come over here for a while, and we'll go quiet about it? Like, that's sort of what it's like.
Yeah, just like that.
It's just like that.
Just like that.
We're talking about a show that takes place in the 50s, but is filmed in the 70s. I mean, era to era. This happens to us all the time. You know, we always joke early in this one, 70s, and a lot of times it was 90s, and how different things are. And what's okay then versus now, jokes, anything. It's ever changing. And not that it isn't wrong to, when we look back and say, oh, you know, you shouldn't have said that. It was just a different era. You can't always just give it credit for being a different era, but there is something to that. What was considered okay or what was kind of standard and what people were raised thinking was all right.
Well, not only that, but they're also portraying a different time, like you said, in the 50s, which was way more wild as far as like the mentality of men and women and so forth and so on than in the 70s, you know, so.
Also, these guys are both soldiers, which they're now growing up 5 years. I mean, this is 5 years after World War II, right? So they're seeing what it was like to be a soldier and the sort of societal status that gave you, especially after World War II. And they're doctors. They are the two things at this time where any woman would be like, I want to, the goal is to marry this person. You know what I mean? So I feel like they get to walk around with like impunity in the real world because like, oh, I'm a war vet and I'm a doctor. Holy shit.
Well, they walk around with impurity in this fucking fake world too. Walking around drunk, doing whatever they want.
It's another one of those things too. Just wanted to look it up. Alan Alda, 36 in this.
Oh, so our age, yeah.
Yeah, he looks a lot older, but I mean, you know, if we were at war, we would write our parents, you know?
Well, not only that, but the reason why I think he's older in this that we joke, he's a doctor. Like, it's not like he was like, he was a practicing doctor, and that's not something that like you get pumped out at like 22 and you're good to go.
Tell that to Doogie Howser.
Yes, unless you're Doogie Howser.
Well, Doogie Howser notwithstanding. But in the infantry, in the army, or any branch of the service, right, in a war, they're like, here's a vest with a red cross on it, and here's a bunch of morphine. If somebody gets shot, stick them with this and try to, like, keep them stable or whatever, right? That's not a doctor. That's somebody who's 18.
Yeah, he's
to
a
be
medic.
These guys, you need people who are surgeons. You have to be in school for a long time to, you know, and be practicing that for a long time.
With a lot of these older shows, you know what I think it is I think it's just the quality of the cameras and stuff. It makes them look older than they are.
That could be.
We've mentioned this before. It's us looking back. They're our parents' age. So they naturally always look to people born now. It doesn't matter. They're gonna look back and see us in high school and be like, damn, you looked old. You know,
you look back at like
thing.
your parents' yearbooks and stuff, and they're 18, 19. Like, they look younger, but I don't know, different eras too, like different hairstyles, makeup styles, wardrobe. That'll change someone's youthfulness and how they come off sometimes because it'll date them.
I wonder if that was a bummer for these guys, right? Because now imagine you want to look like a cool swinging 70s guy, and they're like, no, you have to look like it's 1950. And you're like, but I want mutton chop sideburns. Like, well, you can't fucking have them.
I've had my share of mutton chop sideburns.
You have.
Much past the 70s.
Yeah, you look like the singer from Fall Out Boy.
Nah, his weren't as thick. His weren't as muttony.
Well, if they're not as muttony, I guess it doesn't really count.
His looked like extended loose, long sideburn. We don't need to get into too much mutton chop talk. But so now we see like a different doctor as well. We cut to, and he's like yelling at whoever his assistant. I don't know if it is an assistant or whatever.
I think it's a nurse.
Yeah, he's just yelling at her, and Hawkeye is calls over like someone put a clamp on his mouth, and they kind of have some words back and forth. That's Frank, as we come to learn later on, and after that, we cut to outside when Hawkeye's exiting this mobile hospital, and Frank's like quick to follow behind him, and he's yelling for his attention, and he tells him Hawkeye, also his last name's Pierce. So Frank's calling him Pierce, which is his last name. Frank says to Hawkeye that his conduct in there was unbecoming as an officer and equally reprehensible as a medical man. And he says back to him, Frank, I happen to be an officer only because I foolishly opened an invitation from President Truman to come to this costume party. So So are we to assume that in these times were they almost not drafting per se, but were they soliciting like people of certain fields, like they needed surgeons? So are they seeking out people that they can just bring into the military to serve these purposes?
No, they drafted them.
That's what he means by invitation. He just got it and opened it.
But are you being drafted specifically because of your craft, not so much like an open draft?
No, if you're being drafted, everybody's being drafted. He just had the credentials to become an officer right away instead of otherwise.
Yeah, once they found out he was a doctor, that's the end of that. It's the same thing if you were a dentist,
It's the same thing now. If you join the army now and you have a degree, you can become an officer right away.
But I was thinking of like in times where there's an active draft going on and maybe they have shortages and none of us are military. But what happens when they say, hey, we don't have enough surgeons?
I feel like that's got to start with invites and turns to drafting as needed. You know what I mean? I think you go out there and say, hey, look, we need X, Y, and Z to come over here. And then if you don't get the numbers, then you got to start forcing people's hands, you know?
I imagine that with how powerful the U.S. government is, if they want people, they will get the people.
Yeah. I guess none of us
you
know
won't
the
have a
actual
choice.
practice.
I mean, especially if it's a situation like Korea where it is an all-out war.
Yeah.
That's, I mean, not to get like too political or too real into the real world, but if they want it, they can get it.
Yeah.
This is also still a war right after World War II and pretty far away still from Vietnam, where there's not a lot of dissent amongst people about the war, right? People were much more rah-rah, America, we have to go.
Well, we also just got off of the heels of fighting like a righteous war too. Like World War II was a very much a good versus evil type war. So there wasn't as much pushback.
People are a lot more patriotic in those times, yeah. To go back to the show, as Frank and Hawkeye are going back and forth, Hawkeye kind of says, like, if you're questioning my abilities as a doctor, you know, I'm gonna have to challenge you to a duel. And this is when we meet his friend for the first time, who says like swords or pistols. He's like, I was thinking of specimen bottles at 20 paces. What did he mean by that?
Throwing them.
Jizz.
Throwing piss.
I thought it was what Ferg said.
Oh, you thought it was cum?
Were they gonna just throw that at each other from 20 paces away?
P makes a lot more sense.
I guess.
I think
My
P
mind
just
goes
has
places.
P has the distance.
I guess either way though, that's the goal. It was just gonna be an old fashioned duel where they just huck one of the two things that'll come out of that hole.
A classic body fluid fight.
Yeah.
A classic sword fight, if you will.
Dick grenades.
Yeah. And and he says, hey, there's a lady present. And he goes, oh, sorry, baby. And she goes, Major to you. He goes, oh, sorry, Major baby. that one got me.
That's also one of the ones in my head I hear in the way, Major baby. Like, I just can't not hear that as an old-timey voice.
Still always funny.
And they're still arguing here. And after being told by Frank that he's a disgrace to the outfit, Hawkeye says, you know, he's tired and, you know, they've all been doing surgery for the last 12 hours. And says, you know, kind of sneaks in another dig by telling Frank, you must be tired too from all that malpractice that you've been putting in.
Snap.
I like that's like a doctor burn. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like, you could
yeah.
never say that to somebody who wasn't in the medical fields, you know?
And Hawkeye and his buddy, who goes by Trapper John, as we find out, they kind of head out. Now they're walking towards like their bunker. Is that what that is? Is that what the bunker is where they stay?
Yeah, it's like tent, I think.
Yeah, it's like
it's
a
a
tent, but
It's a barracks.
Yeah, I'd say barracks probably.
and it has the word swamp written on the door. And that's clearly where they live. And greeting them is a Korean boy named Hojan, who once they get inside and sit down, he's like hands them like a small cocktail glass each, which I think would be the gin that they make. We'll find that out in a little bit. And they sit there and like, yes, the finest kind. And he says, you know, let's just throw away all the guns and let's just invite all the jokers from the north and the south and have a cocktail party. And last man standing on his feet at the end wins the war.
This was a weird one political moment in the show where they like sort of leftist went, like maybe the war, we shouldn't be here, war is dumb, right? It's like the one moment where it's, aside from the like, you know, we have to take care of the people who are coming in hurt. I thought it was interesting they throw in one real quick thing and then they just, you know, followed up with extreme sexism and racism immediately after. But
Well, I think before we get into all that stuff, I guess it is interesting because this is obviously a military show first, right? But it kind of skirts around it by focusing on the fact that this is really just the hospital side of it. So it's like the mobile hospital is the focus. So it's not a lot of, and I don't know the future run of the show, but knowing this episode, it's not focusing on combat and a lot of the political stuff that goes behind it. It's more the fact that they are dealing with the hospital. It just happens to be in the middle of a war.
Yeah, I mean, there's no politics on the table during surgery. You know what I mean? Like, a doctor tries to save a patient regardless, you know?
And it's kind of a very smart way to go about that because it kind of takes the politics out of a military show, which is tough to do. So this is kind of a really nice workaround and not isolate viewers.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah, because I bet it happens, and I'm guessing, right? I've never seen this happen in an episode, but I'm assuming at some point they probably have to do surgery on, quote unquote, the enemy, right? And like to a doctor, that doesn't matter. You're doing the job at hand, and that's somebody else's politics to deal with after.
Yeah, right. And now Radar heads in with the mail, and I like the little dialogue here where Trapper Jones like, I don't feel like mail, and Hawkeye's like, go ahead, open it. They can't draft you again.
And I didn't even pick up on it. That answers our question that they were drafted.
Oh, damn it. Yeah. Again, cut that chunk out too.
Yeah, I guess, when you think back at those times though, and there is that fear, in 1950 and you're, in your 20s, early 30s and the mail comes in and you just think any day they can be telling you like, hey, pack up.
I just hope every day when the world gets worse and worse, every day that we get a little bit older, I'm like, we're at a point where it'd have to be pretty bad if they called us, right?
We are,
we're already past the
we're
age.
past it.
No, but I mean, like, yeah, but if they need you, they'll take you. They start.
There are doctrines that could draft us, by the way. There's always a loophole. We are not aged out completely yet.
I mean, if push came to
Shit
shove,
would
I
have
mean,
to get really bad, but there is a chance we could get drafted.
Well, I'm fat, blind, and have asthma, so I think I should be safe.
So you would just ride a desk in a building somewhere.
yeah.
That's fine. Yeah, my ankle is severely damaged. If we're gonna get into all our problems, I can just,
Joe just like, my cum sucks. So
My cum sucks and goldfish will kill me. They're like, all right, you can catch a bullet, buddy.
I like that. Joe walks in, he doesn't even speak it, and like, no, just turns around.
Well, this could also be a great way for us to finally make our sitcom where we all enroll in college at 37. We're like, oh, I don't know. I'm just working on my master's right now. Let's see how long we can pull this off.
Or we can make In the Army Now, the series.
just going to say that.
Sorry,
Yep.
Well,
Pauly Shore.
I'm glad
and
Pauly
us.
Shore got brought up because I had a spot later, but he always has
And
to.
Andy Dick.
I forgot Andy Dick's the other one in there.
They did announce today, Pauly Shore on his Twitter and Instagram today said that Biodome 2 is happening.
That's real. I saw a
Wow.
picture. I thought it was a joke.
Billy Baldwin, too?
Stephen Baldwin.
This does open up the opportunity, too, for...
Is this his first acting role since the first Biodome?
Oh, no. He's been in plenty of stuff.
I wouldn't say plenty.
It must suck being the least talented Baldwin.
He's not the least talented Baldwin.
Who's the least talented?
Who's the one who's in the Death Wish remake?
The one there's probably a bunch of Baldwins who did nothing. Yeah.
But this brought me up to my idea of how badly we need to make Son-in-Law the sequel, Son-in-Law Part 2, Father-in-Law, where they have a kid. Like, how good of a premise is that?
Joe, you can't remake all the Pauly Shore movies.
But I want to.
Actually, what just came to mind was Billy Baldwin was in Forgetting Sarah Marshall as the dude. And when he loses his mind, he goes, "You're fucking Billy Baldwin, aren't you?" It's really funny. Yeah.
He's in the movie. I mean, the show.
So Trapper opens his letter and he's like, "Oh, bad news. It's from my wife. She still loves me." Would you believe this? And she's under the impression that he was conspiring. He got sent to Korea just so he could cheat on her. And he said, and Hawkeye's like, "Well, didn't you?" And she's like, "Yeah, but how'd she figure it out?"
It's like, I want to go to war just so I can... Let's try to think of the Cotton Hill. It's like, she's your war scooch. Like, I just want to go to war just so I can have sex with whatever country I'm sent to's prostitutes. That's how I'll get her.
And Hawkeye's letter is from the dean of his alma mater, telling him that based on Hojan's academic records and Hawkeye's recommendation that they'll be accepting him into the school, they just kind of need to provide the $1,000 tuition. And I like when he tells Hojan about it, his reactions, hot dog. Like what a lost
Wholesome.
term. Yeah, like that's of days of old.
Hojan, I just keep, every time they would say it, just makes me think of in The Simpsons where Homer says, "We can call you Homer Jr. The kids can call you Hoju." Every time they say Hojan, that's all I can think of.
So now Trapper John and Hawkeye need to figure out a way to come up with the money to get Hojan into school. And
Do we know how much $1,000 was in 1972?
will be 1950 when it takes place.
Oh.
That would be about almost $11,000.
That's still a bargain compared to today's rates for college.
I was
so-
gonna say the same thing.
For medical school.
Yeah, that's also true.
Yeah, this is a year of medical school. Now, this is weird to me, too, because it's 1950, and you said, Gordo, that the Americans entered Korea in July. So
Correct.
that means, at the very latest, they've known this dude for 5 months and have made such a bond with him in just 5 months, or much less, that they're willing to write. I mean, it has to have been a while, because I don't know how fast the mail was getting from Korea back and forth.
He's serving them booze every day. That's bond.
If every time I got home, someone opened the door for me, and as soon as I sat, they handed me a nice glass of gin, like, gotta do him a favor
Oh,
somewhere.
a slave.
Well, that does not go nicely into the next line of the
Yeah.
episode at all.
It's a tough transition.
That's your clip for the week right there.
If Joe didn't mention it earlier, I would say skip the next line, but
No,
it's
so
already
then,
been mentioned.
I feel like you have to for cultural whatever.
yeah, well, so then to come up with the money, Trapper jokes that they should sell Spear Chucker while he's asleep.
That is a slavery joke?
Spear
Well,
Chucker,
calling him
yeah.
a racial...
The only other time I've heard that word before is in the movie, I think it's Bowfinger, starring Eddie Murphy. And he says that, he's like, because he says Shakespeare, and he goes, what are you calling me? You calling me that? And then, like, he gets all mad. It's the only other time I've ever heard that term before.
I mean, it's definitely an outdated term. I think maybe it's said in that sort of famous SNL sketch where Chevy Chase and Garrett Morris are saying white and black racial terms to each other back and forth. But it's not something it's said, luckily. Maybe
Yeah,
some people
luckily.
say it. I don't fucking know, but...
This isn't funny, but it's kind of strange. The character, that was his name. Like, they didn't just, like, call him that. That was his name, was Spear Chucker. Like, they
Lovely.
called, like...
That was going to be my next question.
He was dropped from the series because the creators of the show found out that there had been 0 African-American surgeons in the Korean War on the American side. So they were like, we have to be completely accurate, and they just stopped
We have to
letting this
drop
guy on this
the
show.
guy that we
Yeah.
named Spear Chucker off the show.
That's not good. That's bad.
They literally credited him. And the sad part is he was in the movie as a different character named J.D. Vance, I believe. So he played another character. And they said, we're going to bring you back. And
Good news, kid. We got a job for you. Oh, what am I called? That's definitely like a... ooh, that's bad.
It's bad.
Yeah, I
Doesn't-
mean, 70s.
I don't even want to say that ages badly because that wasn't good then either, right? Because when you
No.
because they're joking race, like it's not like Archie Bunker saying something racist and he's a buffoon, right? And you're laughing at him being so shitty. This is just like, oh, these two guys who are the heroes of the show are just casually like, we could sell the slave. Like, what the fuck are you doing?
And then at this point, it's like, I don't know anything else about the show. So I don't know if, like, they're, like, friends or if, like...
Yeah, he
like-
doesn't have much in this episode, right? He has like a line earlier on when they first get in there when he goes to bed, and he doesn't say anything. You see him in the beginning playing football with Radar, but yeah, you don't know this character well enough to know his rapport with the other guys. And it's not like they all bunk together just because they like each other. You just kind of, you were put where you're put, so you don't know.
It's
Yeah.
very weird.
Yeah. Very odd.
I'd like to go on record and say, I don't like it. Just gonna put that out there into the
exactly.
universe. Not a fucking fan.
Nope.
So as they continue to brainstorm ideas of ways to raise money, they go, what do these guys really want? Sex.
Why,
So-
you know what? My question was, why don't they have $1,000? They're successful. I know they're in war now, but they should have money from their practice before getting drafted. No?
Yeah, from being surgeons.
It's a good
Yeah.
question.
I mean, it's still $11,000.
They're still doctors.
Yeah, but a house in 1950 cost like 2 pence and a loaf of bread, so they should be doing just fine as
Nonetheless,
surgeons.
if you could find a way to raise money and not take it all out of your savings account, then why not?
That's more or less what it is. I mean, you get
No, but no, they say, where are we going to find $1,000?
They're also in the middle of Korea, not exactly, in their neighborhood.
Yeah, you can't, like, Venmo your parents.
So they
like,
write a letter
so-
home, hey, take this out of my account.
Wire it over.
Send a telegram to the Max, and we'll see if we can get it for you.
But yeah, so to go back, they've realized that the best way to get funds raised from all these guys is to sell sex, essentially. So Hawkeye tells John they'll have Radar print up some tickets and a sign that reads, all you can drink, $10 a head, giant door prize, weekend pass for 2 in Tokyo, lucky winner to share the company of gorgeous nurse. So are they prostituting one of the nurses?
Yes.
Yes.
I don't think so. I think it's a harebrained scheme for not Radar, for Hawkeye to get a date with the nurse he wants.
But
to
he
fuck.
didn't even know, because I mean the way it plays out, that's not, well, as we'll see later. But I think they're selling the idea of sex, like that's what these guys want.
Yeah, they're selling the idea of sex, but they're not prostituting her out because he plans on himself winning, and then the priest.
So is it implied though that to the person, regardless of the intent on their end, to the people who are buying tickets?
Yeah, if they win, they get to go to Japan and have sex with the gorgeous nurse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
These
70s.
racist slave trader pimp
Yeah.
surgeons.
Now, is it assumed that the nurse is on board, or that they will have the opportunity to like woo her into sleeping with him?
They haven't thought about it. As we're about to find out, they have not thought about that far ahead in their plan. They just think it sounds good and that's what will sell. And then they fill in the pieces later.
So yeah, from there we cut to Radar with the Lieutenant Colonel Henry Blake, and they do like a couple gags where Radar seems to always be a couple steps ahead of everything that Blake needs, and we touched on that earlier with the whole him hearing the helicopter. And I assume this is why his name's Radar, because his like sense abilities.
Yeah.
If he was in the Navy, they'd call him Sonar.
Oh, like in the movie Down Periscope, there's a character named Sonar, played by the guy that's in Rocket Man. I forget his name.
So Hawkeye and Trapper John enter, and they greet Henry Blake, and they show him the letter that the dean had sent, and they requested some weekend passes and explain what it's for. So Blake says it seems like a good enough cause, and he goes, why don't I trust you guys? Trapper John goes, because we're not trustworthy. I don't know. Trapper John has a few lines I really like throughout the episode. It seems like they feed him the good one-liners.
Trapper John is, I think, the funnier of the two because he's less egregiously terrible.
He gets to be the cool one on the side, though. There's, less is more sometimes. So this episode, there's almost not a single moment where you don't see Hawkeye on screen, where Trapper John's with him most of the time, but he's more in and out. He's not speaking as much. So, that cool factor gets to stay in play.
Yeah, I think this show may have worked a little better with a bigger ensemble cast instead of focusing on these two constantly, though, because it made me hate them.
Yeah, it can be tough at times. So Blake then asks what nurse they have, conned into this. And Hawkeye says they hadn't asked, but there's only one clear choice. A girl with a face that doesn't quit. A girl with so much body, she should be continued on to the next girl, which I thought that was a good line. But they are talking about Lieutenant Dish. And Blake says she'll never agree to this, but Hawkeye tells him, that he's kind of, he has a way with her. So even though she's inaccessible to everybody else, she's putty in the hands of the master, which that line sounded really creepy when he said it.
Well, yeah, and then you look at what the montage of what happens
Well,
next.
yeah, I mean, even leading in, as they're describing her, when he's giving all this description of her, you see a shot of her and she's kind of painting her toenails, and it kind of pans up her body, and once you finally get to her head, he kind of creeps in from behind and just starts kissing her neck. So he's like relentless with her.
Yeah, this is basically like a scene from Porky's.
Yeah, it's back then, though. Like, writing was so different. Look back at, like, Revenge of the Nerds. He basically, like, rapes that girl, and it's, like, played for, like, jokes.
And that's 12 years later.
Yeah.
And she is somewhat into him, right? So, because when he's doing this, she's like, Hawkeye, that makes me crazy. And he says, my lips were made by Stradivarius.
It's a weird reference.
70s.
It's 1870s? Like a Stradivarius reference?
So she reminds him that she's engaged, and he says that he is too. Think of me as a dress rehearsal. I guess there's a lot of infidelity going on at this place.
I mean, it makes sense, right?
I suppose. No. I mean,
I imagine there's a lot of sex in war, right? I mean,
Yeah.
the same thing as like when they say there's a lot of sex at the Olympics, right? It's like a bunch of people in this weird high pressure,
Especially a military unit where they don't have to go anywhere ever. They're always there.
right? They're never on patrol.
I think that's more, I don't want to say it's excusable, but I can see how that happens more though than at the Olympics. It's like, hey, you guys are bunkered here for like 2 weeks, so,
Yeah.
Well, I'm not comparing the two.
Yeah,
I'm just
no,
saying that, like, you know, you
I get
always
what you're
hear that
saying.
the Olympic Village is so sexual because it's these people who all have a shared experience together, you know?
Yeah.
And it's a big release. No pun
And they're all on
intended.
hormones.
And so she keeps talking about how he's always sneaking up on her and how she's trying to be faithful, but, you know, a girl can only take so much. And we get these various shots of him sneaking up on her in the library, like hiding in a chest. He's like
In
in
the
a bag
shower.
at some point, like in the shower, which is
The shower is pretty rough, yeah.
that's a little more
Yeah.
that's a little more line crossing. Obviously, in this case, not that what he's doing is right. She is obviously very receptive of it. She is clearly into him too. Because even saying that, like, you know, I'm trying to be faithful, but a girl can only take so much. She's saying to him, hey, I'm trying to be good, but if you keep up this, I'm eventually going to give in.
Yeah, like, keep going and this will happen.
Yeah, like, it's going to happen because I can't take this much longer.
Keep victim blaming you two.
No, I'm
This
going
is not
by
victim blaming.
I'm going by what she is saying.
I'm not messing with you.
They're both terrible people.
They're all terrible.
Everyone in
people, I
this
think,
is
yeah.
bad. Except for maybe Hoju.
Hot dog.
He just seems okay. He's the one where I'm like, okay. And the other guy who I'm not going to say his name, who has one line and is sleeping and just gets denigrated. I'm assuming he's okay too, just for... Oh, and also, I'm not going to say, I'll wait till we say it later.
Joe's not going to say his name. Joe definitely said his name earlier in the episode, though. So,
Greg Army Man.
so
G.I. Greg.
also, he never really gets around to telling her what that favor that he needed was, but because he's still relentlessly kissing her neck. But I'm going to assume off camera, she's clued in later on.
I'm just gonna say, like, this whole like thing was a little uncomfortable, but when he came out of the suitcase, like the trunk, it made me laugh.
That one was funny.
That's a good little bit of physical
Yeah.
comedy,
Yeah. And as this is happening, you see Frank and Margaret, who I guess also is known as Hot Lips, they're spying on them from their bunker with like binoculars, which they're not that far away. You didn't need binoculars. These two were also, by the way, the ones who were playing footsie reading the Bible. So
Oh, they were?
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, wasn't that invested that early to realize who was who in the intro? So
I wouldn't have picked up on that either. The only reason I did was later in the episode because Frank's Bible comes into play again.
Oh, okay.
And that's when I was able to put that together. And then back in the bunker where Hawkeye and Trapper John are, like, they're counting all the tickets now to see how much money they've made so far. And they're at about like $600. And Hawkeye says they need to get, you know, everyone in on this and give everyone the opportunity to buy some of these tickets. So he starts going through Frank's things to find some money. This is what I was just talking about. And Frank walks in and catches Hawkeye, who's looking through the Bible for money, I assume, just seeing if he stashes it there. When Frank's like, what are you doing? He's like, oh, I just wanted to borrow your Bible. He's like, since when are you interested in the Bible? And then this is another good Trapper John line. I peeked at the end, Frank. The devil did it.
That is a good line.
I think that was like my first like legitimate laugh from like a line in the whole thing. But
Trapper John got me a couple times. Like I said, they tend to give him the good one-liners.
It seems weird to me that so many people used to keep money in books, specifically the Bible, because everybody knew about that. So it seemed like a bad place to do it, right? Like even Ninja Turtles, Danny steals money from April O'Neil's, I think, Bible.
no, it's her purse.
He pulls it out of a book.
He pulls it out of her purse.
I thought he pulls it out of the book.
Maybe he stole from her many times.
Her
Maybe.
pocketbook.
I'm not, yeah, nice.
Now I'm gonna have to watch that tonight, and you're gonna have to answer for Kelsey for when the next week I just keep going, "For baby turtles," and she hits me with a frying pan because that's what will happen.
I always liked Cowabunga.
I made another funny. Well, to say that that's like kind of a common hiding, it's no different than the leaving the key under the doormat, you know? It's that same, the obvious spot. I don't think I ever had like,
Where do you guys hide your keys?
I was gonna, or money.
Where do you keep your money and your jewels, Betty?
Yeah,
I keep mine in the bank.
that's the thing.
I've got a fake Barbasol can with the bottom comes out.
Yeah, we are a little 1 foot in, 1 foot out as far as like the generational stuff, but we were like raised half in a time where there was no debit cards and stuff. But living in today's world, there is no need to hide money somewhere. You have access to your stuff at all times.
Just never use cash either. I've had a $20 bill in my wallet for like 8 months at this point. Just like haven't.
I found a $100 bill in my wallet recently. No idea when I put it in
That's
there.
awesome. But it's to the point that I get uncomfortable when I have actual cash. It's like, I don't want it.
I always carry cash. It's always easier.
easier than just swiping the card. It takes longer to count money.
No, it doesn't.
Yes, it
I mean,
does.
if you're buying a car, maybe, but I mean, if you're buying
I
a
know. If
regular
I'm buying like a
purchase-
pack of gum or I'm at like 7-Eleven or something like that, throw 20, they work on counting the change. Like, it doesn't matter.
There's more going on. I can just swipe my card. We're done.
Yeah,
Done.
I mean, to each their own. I just like having cash.
I don't even use the card anymore. I get it on my phone, just beep beep, pay.
Well, let it be known to any of you pumping us in the street, if you're going to attempt to rob any of us, go for Nick.
Jay
He's the
has
only one with cash.
$100 in his wallet.
I do.
right
I do have
now.
$100 in my wallet. I don't think it's there anymore. I think I found it and promptly spent it.
Instantly.
I have an emergency $2 in my wallet.
What the fuck is that gonna do?
That's another reason why I don't like carrying cash, is because it makes me aware of how much I'm spending.
Yeah,
Wait. What is this emergency $2 gonna fix one day?
bad breath. Like, I need gum right now.
That's a bus.
Yeah, that's a bus or a train, right?
Is it anymore?
I don't know.
The train might be more than 2
Train
now.
is $1.90 one way.
And for that stellar service on the MBTA, I think it's worth every penny.
So, anyways, to go back to this, the going through the Bible situation seems to be what made Frank finally snap. He's tired of them. He's tired of the remarks. He's tired of what he says, the corruption of Hojon. But Hojon seems fine. But maybe just that he takes part in some of the activities that they do.
Yeah, the corruption of getting him to medical school.
Yeah, you're ruining this child's life. But he says they're turning this place into a brothel. And then he starts running around and kind of like, I don't want to say destroying things. He's doing very light. He's just kind of like ripping things off the wall and like tossing them in the air. And then it says, and a distillery, and he grabs the gin mill. This is because at the time earlier when they were having a drink, I didn't know what they were drinking. But I was pleased to see that they're gin guys. I'm a fellow gin man myself.
Now, question is, I don't know how much you know about this, but how long does it take to make gin? Like,
Very quickly. Like, if you
Okay.
see, like, you'll see, like, a brewery pop up pretty often, right? Like, all over the place, a beer brewery, because it doesn't take that long to make beer. And you don't see a lot of distilleries pop up very often, because it takes a long time.
yeah, see, I knew it took a long time. That's why I questioned
Certain
gin,
spirits take
like-
longer than others. So
But
yeah.
Gin is one of the absolute quickest you can do.
Okay.
And like the first one that opened up around here, it was like, we're open and we've got gin. And in 8 years, we'll have whiskey. I was like, all right, sure.
So yeah, so he grabs the gin mill and they're telling him like, hey, calm down. And he throws it to the floor and he breaks it pretty much instantly. And so they get like a sack and they threw it over his body and they just like legit boot him out the door. And you get that, like, I thought he'd never leave. But I think this is just, I'm surprised they weren't more angry because I can only assume, like, what is your access to get a new gin mill in your, in Korea?
I don't think it was so broken it was unfixable, though. I mean, they probably built it by parts of stuff that was around, so they probably have the same stuff.
It also looked like he slammed it down and it just came apart. I don't know if anything broke.
Might have ruined a whole batch of gin.
That's likely.
It's funny because my first thought was, how are they going to get people drunk at this mixer now?
A whole bunch of surgeons went blind.
I know, right?
Right?
No, I was gonna say with the parts, they can order it because they're a hospital. Like the army isn't gonna be like, no, hospital, you can't have these.
Why are they wasting time on gin when they have a whole bunch of morphine? Getting fucked up.
So now we cut to them back in Blake's office, and he tells him that, as a result of what they did to Frank, he has to withdraw the passes, and he's canceling the raffle and the whole party in general, which seemed, I don't know, like a big punishment for just putting a sack over him and like kicking him in the butt. Like they didn't do anything that terrible, but
I wonder if he told on them they were trying to rob me or something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is just like act to this dude. It's act 5,000. You know what I mean? And that's the last one to like make him go over the edge. I think we sort of get the idea that like they just constantly fuck with this dude and he's kind of a total knob. And
this is Jim making Dwight's ID gigantic and having it so his
Yes.
middle name is Fart. So, is it the worst thing he did to him? No, but is it the one that makes him snap? Absolutely. And, but Blake tells him kind of on the side too, that he was a little upset anyways, because he has to leave for a few days and he was going to have to miss the party. So it almost seemed like he wouldn't have canceled it if he was in town, but the fact that he's not going to be there made it a little bit easier for him to make that decision.
See, I thought he was canceling it because it was his duty, but he was giving the wink, wink, nudge, nudge. I'm not going to be here, so do what you want. Because they seemed close when they were talking earlier.
I think they are fairly close. I didn't get that that vibe that he was kind of like telling them to do it anyways, because his fear is that he's going to have to answer to the general. And with Frank still being there, I think it would have been tough for them to still go forward with everything. He did revoke the passes. He didn't have to do that if he was trying to, secretly let it happen.
I like Ferg's idea, though. I think that'd be a good plot point if he was like, I'm leaving for 2 days so that I can't be held accountable for this because I know what you're going to do. You'll find any way to make this happen so it's not on my ass if I'm not here.
I mean, where did Radar get the passes that he shows up with later? He had to have got them from him, who he works right under.
He told him exactly how he got
Yeah,
it.
he told him
explain
how
that.
he did it.
He makes them sign them because he tricks them into thinking it's something else.
Yeah,
Oh,
so
yeah.
that's kind of what it happens
That's
right here.
right.
Because now it cuts to them, like the big send-off, because he's about to take the helicopter to like leave for a few days. And as everyone's waving, that's when Radar shows up and gives Hawkeye those weekend passes. And he said that he basically was able to have Blake sign them thinking that he was ordering a ton of ice cream. That seemed like a weird way to go. Like, why did he order a ton of ice cream? Like, were they having like an ice cream social?
I would love to see the scene later. Hey, where's my ice cream?
He comes back and he's like, it was a long 2 days and I'd love a bowl of fudge ripple. Like, oh, sorry about that. How about some gin?
The ice cream thing seemed weird, but the idea that Radar could like outsmart Blake didn't, because he's always a step ahead of him and it's kind of confusing him at times. So I can see how it flustered in the moment. He's like, oh, you're going to sign this for this and then that and that. And he just like, okay, whatever, and just signs it quick, doesn't even read it.
He doesn't seem like he's exactly on the ball.
I just think that Radar is so far ahead that it's like, it'll spin your brain around.
Nah, he doesn't seem to. You can kind of tell, like, who are career people and who are kind of just drafted, right? Like, there's a stark difference in demeanor and characters. Like, Houlihan, Frank, Hawkeye, Trapper John, this guy, I forget his name. I'm a Colonel Potter guy. Blake, yeah. You can just kind of tell their demeanor that these guys were drafted, so I don't care. Do whatever you want. It's
Yeah, but
not-
he is the higher ranking official, so he is moving up within what's going on there.
I mean, that's true, but it doesn't mean that he has to care.
Yeah, I guess he's got to interview well. So now as the helicopter takes off, we hear over the loudspeaker, attention all personnel, both day and night shifts will be confined to duty in the admitting ward tomorrow night. All other activities are canceled. There will be no exceptions by order of Acting Commanding Officer Major Frank Burns. So now that Blake's away, Frank is actually the guy in charge. He knew about the party, so to ensure that the party doesn't happen, he set this up so everyone had to be busy at that point in time.
An evil plan.
And there is like a little kind of weird, as this is being announced, you see Frank kind of walking along, and a few of them, like Hawkeye and Trapper John and a couple others, are standing up top of like a hill. And when the announcement's made, Hawkeye picks up like a rock and you see Frank at the bottom nervous that he's going to throw it at him, but instead he throws it at the loudspeaker, which kind of shuts it off.
It's kind of a Fonz move.
Yeah, a bit of that.
Hey.
But this wasn't happening in the female washroom or whatever. It's not in the women's room of the fucking
Arnold.
sewer swamp room or whatever they live in.
I mean, it's only kind of one step away from that.
So now we're back in the mobile hospital, and Hawkeye is checking up on someone as Frank walks in, and he calls Frank over to check something out. And when Frank leans over to like check on this patient, someone gets a needle and like pulls it out and sticks a shot in Frank's ass, which immediately puts him in like this trance-like state where he can't speak, and he's like just making like noises like ha ha, and like they lift him up and bring him into another bed and start like bandaging his face, which at the time seemed unnecessary, but it does kind of come into play later.
It does come into play, but at first I was just like, are they just making him Dark Man? It's not like a thing. I know, Frank, I know.
It seems a little
dancing freak.
Yes.
See, the bandaging seemed a little like overkill. Like they didn't need to cover his whole face and his eyes and everything.
Has anybody ever had their head bandaged like that before? Because I haven't. It's not fun.
I have not.
Please
but dude,
elaborate.
This is so stupid. I was like 6 or something. Like on a chain link fence on the gate, there's like the little latch hook that's like a U that comes down. So I was running to get a ball down my driveway when I was a kid, and it was down, and I just ran straight into it and like split my head wide open.
Oh, that explains it.
And they had to bandage your whole face for that?
Well, they did like all of my head like up to here and then like the round part.
Oh, yeah.
So I had like this much of me. I could Vogue, and that was pretty much all I could do at the time. But yeah, I remember my parents calling me G.I. Joe, making fun of me, which also does not help any of my mental shit that I have going on. But yeah, not a fun experience. I hadn't thought about that in a long time.
You could say it gave you a splitting headache.
Yes, Gordo. Like
Your punchlines, you have you like go in a radio voice.
Yeah, he turns into like Tom Bergeron when he gives a shitty joke.
You
for
can say give you a splitting headache. Ha ha ha.
yeah, you sort of sound like Don Pardo from like 90s SNL, like musical guest Sting.
Chris Kattan,
Booger. And your host, John Goodman.
Oh, shit. I thought I muted my microphone. Sorry about that. I didn't mute my mic. It hurts my voice to do that.
Your radio voice hurts?
It doesn't hurt, but it makes me cough.
now you sound like Tazon Day.
Chocolate rain.
Chocolate rain.
Spewing poopy down my face again. Chocolate rain. Gonna take a dookie once again.
So, all right. So, Hawkeye orders that he's sedated every hour on the hour. And my only thing with that was, won't he still eventually rat him out, though? Like, so even if they get away with all this for now, there's going to be a point, like, they're not sedating Frank forever, so you can't just, like, drug him until the end of time. There's going to be a point where, like, the lieutenant's back.
There's not much foresight in this plan.
Yeah.
Well, maybe he'll be so drugged they can convince him that something else happened to him, or he was at the party and got way too drunk. Some MacGuffin, like...
He doesn't know what got him in that state, right? It all happened so quick, but...
That's just me trying to put logic to something with no logic.
So the idea would be he would have to not know what happened to him, and then they have to keep him out so long that the party happens and is like cleaned up after that he'll never even know that it ever happened.
Or maybe like after they put him in like a bed with like a farm animal, and then he wakes up and like thinks he like fucked like a pig, and then
What?
it's like he's not gonna tell anyone that story.
I
Then he's the guy that fucked a pig.
What?
What are you going to believe, pig fucker over there?
And that's how the Korean War was won.
Yeah. But yeah, and even that, or Margaret, just in general, like could have said something, but and we'll see her kind of unveil all the situation as it comes, because she is involved in what's going on and trying to find Frank. But now the party's underway, and you see everybody walking in, and some people were dressed so strange that I couldn't tell if it was intentionally a costume party or not. But I think maybe they were just kind of wearing whatever odd items that they've bought since getting to Korea.
Like cowboy hats.
Yeah, like
No, some of them had like dresses over their like army clothes and stuff, and like, some had cowboy hats. They had
Hawkeye had a lay on.
a few of them had lays on.
I'd say that some of them were gonna get laid.
Gonna get laid.
Dennis Miller.
Chris Elliott.
Oh, I love Chris Elliott. My favorite SNL sketch of all time. This Zima tastes like candy.
So Hawkeye and Lieutenant Dish walk up to the bar area, and it looks like Hojon is kind of like the bartender for this party, and he hands them both a glass of what I assume is the gin that they distill there. And Dish tells Hawkeye she doesn't know how he's going to get her out of going away with the winner, but also has a feeling that he's going to be the one who wins. So she does suspect that he's got this under control, because she doesn't want to just go on a date with some creep for a couple days in Japan where she's expected to fuck him. And right around here, Margaret storms in looking for Frank, who's now been missing for hours. And they're like, oh, you haven't heard? Frank's gone. He went over to the enemy. They offered him 100 more a week and royalty on bedpans. And she says, when she finds him, Hawkeye is going to be arrested. And then Hawkeye tells her that he kind of has some intel that there's this situation that happened with some Canadians that had been attacked. And by midnight, they're all going to be flooding into their area. And, if he's arrested, he's not going to be able to help. So he feels like he has a bit of immunity here. And this definitely does come into play later in the episode. But right here, it's This to me was like this is why he's so cocky all the time. He's clearly so needed that he feels like he can get away with whatever he wants.
And he
he's
can.
not there by choice. He's forced.
Yeah. And we do see more of that later, but at this point of the episode, it became very clear, like, this is why he has, like, no respect of the ranking system.
You know what this honestly reminded me of was House. Like, House
I swear to God, I was going to say the same thing. I was waiting for one of you to bring up that he was drinking. I was going to say, well, House is always on.
Yeah, he's a treacherous dick, but he is so good at what he does, they cannot afford to not have him around, so.
And
it's-
cocky and overly sexual.
Right,
and-
yeah, exactly.
Now, does this ever backfire on Hawkeye? Like, he goes really far one day and he's like, that doesn't matter. I'll do whatever I want. And then once that next platoon of dead kids comes in, we'll be all set. And they'll be like, slow day in Korea. He's like, oh, I can really use some dead kids right now.
I mean, all that needs to happen is to have that one girl he hit on too many times just, like, break his hand, and then he can't do anything, you know?
Like, poke him in the eye. So basically, he's one Three Stooges gag away from not being needed in this hospital anymore. If there's a seltzer bottle anywhere near, you better stay away from it.
Who are all of your favorite Stooges? You got a favorite one of the Stooges?
Curly.
Will Sasso. I've always been a Shemp guy.
I was going to say the same thing.
The two of you being Shemp guys, I could have bet money on. It is so fucking the contrarian thing to be. You're both like that. Shemp.
love
Fuck off
Shemp.
with Shemp.
I was going to announce it as you want to hear the most J answer you'll get is me saying that it's Shemp because it's like just like unconventional.
Yeah, because Shemp is the Crispix of
boring.
Three Stooges.
Yeah.
No, he was like the
He was
founder.
the original. He came before.
He's Mo's
He's
brother.
a brother. Yeah.
I like Larry.
I know, I just think Curly was
I'm a
better.
Mo man.
Hans
Hans
Mo
Moman.
Man.
Good moment to you.
Good Mo man to you. I say that to my dog every morning. Good Mo man to you.
I'm only 35 years old. A lot of Simpsons tonight.
A lot of episodes. And if you want to hear us talk about The Simpsons in extended form, go back into the archives. We did do a Simpsons episode for Christmas time.
Yeah. Our Christmas episode.
So then we see Margaret off somewhere on the phone asking to get General Hammond on the phone. And when they cut to Hammond being told, like he's like sitting at like dinner or something, and he's being told that she's on the line, and he gets excited, and it cuts to the scene of them like from the past in some hospital that they were working in, and they just start hooking up. So this is why she's kind of so confident that she can get these guys in trouble. She has a bit of a history with the general.
I thought it was strange to have a flashback within a cutaway.
That is a good point.
That is strange. Yeah, I didn't think about it, though.
How many devices can we shove into this one scene? How many times can we make everybody forget some of the repulsive words we've said 10 minutes ago?
It says a lot though about all the characters, right? Because now we think of Margaret as one of the, I don't want to say good ones, but one of the more wholesome ones, right? She's the one who's reading the Bible and doesn't like seeing all these wild activities. And then we have the general, and then you look at them and like they're just as bad as everybody else. You know, they got their own things going on.
Yeah, she's a hypocrite.
And, you know, from there we cut back and forth with like shots of the party and then also shots of Margaret looking around with a flashlight trying to find Frank. And she does eventually end up in that unit that he's in, and she shines the light like over him, but his face is covered with the bandages. So I maybe that did buy a little bit of time. I think maybe that's where that came into play, that they were hiding his face in case someone was looking for him.
Yeah, that was the reason.
Which makes sense because you don't think of why they're doing it at first, and then you're like, oh, that's actually kind of smart. It's not just Darkman.
She also takes the needle out to give him the next shot because that's on its medical records, and then she realizes it's him and stops. So
Yeah, they even make a chart for him to get that once an hour.
You know what's funny is I didn't really pick up on that when that happened. Like I was watching it, I was a little confused by what I was seeing, and that makes so much sense. It just kind of escaped me at the time.
Because it'll keep him. Whoever's doing the rounds will just think he's some soldier.
Yeah. Until like Hawkeye forgets that he even did this, and this guy's just being shot up and like put in a sedated state for months on end. This is a rotating, like just getting shot after shot.
And then how does she come to realize that it actually is Frank?
Because she pulled his pants down.
Because she recognizes his cock. What's going on? Now that's where I got a real good, genuine laugh there.
I guess I missed that.
I caught that, but I guess I thought maybe just his butt.
No, she
No.
was like, oh, that's my cock. I know what's up.
There's my cock.
There's my boobs. You want my cold dead body?
Stop it.
There it is.
I haven't trim spotted in a long time. She's fantastic.
Jeez. So we're back at the party, and Hawkeye stands up on like something just to address everybody and announces that because of everybody's generosity and thirst, they managed to raise $1,800 for Ho-John's college career. So he says it's off to a flying start, and then Ho-John jumps up and he's like, "Go team, fight team, yeah team." I was like, what?
The stereotypical foreign character.
Yeah.
That's how they wrote them back then. Like, what's his name? Indiana Jones' little sidekick. Mr. Jones. It's like, well, they wrote everybody back then.
Yeah, it's a definitely just a trope of back then where it's like,
Or Data.
but I mean, even if you go into even other war thing, right? Even if you go into as like a language barrier joke, they still do. Because if you go into Saving Private Ryan, which was way more modern, there's the German soldier they catch. He doesn't know what to do, and the only words he can say in English, he's like, "Oh, Betty Boop, what a dish!" Right? Like this is very much like even a trope still.
Gordo, seeing where you know the show a little bit better than the rest of us, I don't like to go into future episodes much, but out of curiosity, someone like Ho-John, does he get more dialogue down the line, or is he always kind of limited to like these quick one-line things?
Or does he go to America?
So he's definitely not in later seasons.
Okay.
Because he's in medical school.
Yeah, so he's definitely in medical school. As far as the first season, because like I said, I don't generally, not to say anything, but I don't generally like ones with Colonel Blake. I generally tend to skip them because I think he's only there for like the first couple of seasons, and the first season is a little short. But I don't like him. I like Colonel Potter, but I don't remember seeing Ho-John in any other episode.
Okay.
So,
because in this episode, he has this go team line and he has hot dog. And I think that's the only time he speaks.
I don't recall seeing him in any other episode.
I wonder if he's there as an to take away from the terrible deeds they're doing. It's like, wow, these people are pieces of shit, but look how they're helping this nice boy.
Yeah, they're doing one nice thing over here. It's good though, because you can't have a kid that young be on a show that goes for 11 years and still be playing. That's like a real, like, we left Kevin home alone and he's only 35.
So he appeared in 7 episodes.
Okay, so just this first season he's in, I assume, right?
I believe so, yes.
So this show lasted for 11 seasons, and in the first season, they fired the Black and Korean actors from the cast before the season was even over.
Hey, they wrote off the Korean guy.
Sorry, they wrote off the Korean guy. They probably just never even mentioned what they did to the black guy. Wowza.
So hold on. So this show was shot in what? 1972, correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
Ho-John was 30 years old.
In real life.
In real life.
In this episode, he was 30. Wow.
Yes, he was born August 2nd, 1942.
Well, he's supposed to probably be, like 18, maybe
He's
younger?
trying to get into college, yeah.
Yeah.
But he's 30.
He does look young. I wouldn't have pegged him for 30, for sure.
Good genes, yeah. Is he still alive? Because what would that put him now?
That would...
80 years old?
It doesn't say he's dead
Good
on
for him.
IMDb.
He'd be right around, he'd be 80 years old this year, yeah.
Yeah, no, and he's from Manila, Philippines.
That's where they make the envelopes.
Yeah.
He's divorced to Lonnie Ackerson.
Oh, come on, Lonnie.
Yeah. And it lists
Fuck you,
no other
Lonnie.
person.
I say
Lonnie
that, and
done.
then you read up on it, and you find out he did something unspeakable, and then we're just sitting here defending him because we saw him on a TV show for 30 minutes.
Or she does, or it's like she tied him up and like put cigarettes out on him for 10 years and he couldn't get out. She hobbled him like in misery.
What? Yeah, the cause of most divorces, hostage
It happens.
situations.
Why does your brain go to these places?
Remember when it hit my head that time?
Well, yeah. First, yeah, Joe hit his head when he was 6. Second, Joe's the only person on here who willingly had someone burn him with a cigarette before.
That was specific, and that was not weird or sexual.
It wasn't sexual.
Oh, it was weird, I guess, yeah.
I think it's story time for the readers.
Oh, I don't think it's a very interesting story.
We don't also have readers either.
Yeah.
Well, we've teased it now. If you want to get into the 10-second story, you might as well.
Sure, yeah. So just without giving too much back detail, there is a stupid punk thing from the band The Germs where they burn you on the wrist with a cigarette, and it's supposed to be like a sort of cult thing where everybody is part of the same group. and then I convinced one of them to do that to me.
Put on his nipple.
Very, very drunk, and it burned me so bad that my arm or my wrist was like shooting pus out of it, and I was very drunk on the
Ew.
train home on a Friday after a Red Sox game, and people were giving me all the space in the world I needed because I was stumble-bum drunk and shooting pus all over the place, and nobody wanted to bother me. What?
Is the scar visible still?
Oh, yeah.
Show it.
It's on his butt. He can't.
I don't think you can see it on here, but I can take a picture if you want. Hold on. It's hard to get your wrist around.
Yeah,
that.
I don't know how well it'll translate
Yeah,
into
no,
a
that's
webcam.
not gonna work.
Yeah, you really can't tell. I'll show you in a picture.
And you know who won't be able to tell? The people listening to us right now.
Right.
So
Maybe we could put it on our Instagram.
we could potentially, if we remember to, S1E1 pod on Instagram. Keep an eye out. It might be in the stories. So now it's time to finally announce the winner of this raffle. So he calls Lieutenant Dish up to help him pick the winning ticket from the bowl. So when you see her reach in the bowl, you see that there's a ticket at the bottom that's taped on. So that's the one that she could fish for and then reach out, which was clever because no one's going to catch that from a safe distance. And now they announced the winner is Father John P. Mulcahy.
Yeah, Mulcahy.
Yeah, okay.
And I was surprised by that because I thought for sure the whole reason of the set, especially where they made it a point to show you that it was rigged, was to have Hawkeye win. But I guess the theory would just be maybe it was too obvious that if Hawkeye won, so he picked the priest because he wouldn't try anything.
Yeah, it's super smart. It's how he probably convinced her to agree to it by saying it would be the priest.
Yeah, I'll get the one guy who's not going to try to sleep with you. Yeah. Because even when they announced his name, he looked like nervous and shocked. Like he just really just wanted to donate to the cause. He didn't actually want this trip.
It's smart.
Yes, it was like the perfect, and it was a nice, it wasn't the obvious answer. So it's always nice when those things happen in episodes.
It just shows how smooth Hawkeye is.
Well, I was going to say either he's going to give up his trip or, she's just going to go away with the
That's
priest.
true too. He might be able to manipulate it so the priest gifts him the opportunity to go. Maybe he has no interest in going to Japan.
Yeah, because he's got to be there.
He offered him a night with Hojo instead.
Oh. Oh.
So at this point, after the announcement, we hear the 10 hut, and this is when General Hammond and Lieutenant Colonel Blake walk in, and the general's like, do I understand that the priest of this outfit has just won a weekend with a nurse in Tokyo? And Hawkeye's like, it's a prayer come true.
No, John's like, I'm not a nurse.
Moving on. The general asks Hawkeye who he is, and after he introduces himself, he asks the general who he is. And he tells Hawkeye, what do you think the star means? The star that was like on like his shoulder. Like I'm not too familiar with a lot of how military attire goes.
That's a general.
Yeah. Well, obviously, yeah. But the answer he gets back from Hawkeye is your Tinkerbell. So Blake steps in and announces who the general is, and Hawkeye just goes like, oh, hi. Again, he has no fear of authority, no respect for the ranking system. He's just there. And I guess because he knows where he sits as far as surgery goes, he fears like no repercussions for anything he does. So knowing it was a general didn't matter to him.
Suspension of disbelief, that's only going to get you so far, where you can't keep disrespecting higher officers and keep doing all the stuff he does.
This could also backfire on him too, where they're like, okay, buddy, well, guess what? You're going to go in the brig until we need you for surgery. And then when the surgery is done, you're back in the brig. So now your life is prison and surgery, right? Like that could be a punishment that way,
Yeah, so General Hammond tells Hawkeye and Trapper John that they're both under arrest. Trapper says he'd like to get a second opinion on that, and we find out that they're being arrested for breaking orders and handing out unauthorized passes, but again, these two seem completely unfazed. Like, they already know that they're not going to get in trouble. And this is when Margaret and Frank walk in. Frank walks in like he can walk, but he's still like off and can't seem to speak, and he's still half bandaged over his face. And you get Hawkeye saying, the mummy strikes.
Pretty good.
And this is when she sees the general and goes, Hamilton? But I don't think his name, I tried looking up. I don't think his name was Hamilton unless something changed. But he goes, Hot Lips? And then the two look at each other and go, Hot Lips? So that was already your nickname, but now they know that nickname precedes her being there.
Now, do they say it before? See, I knew the name of the character.
He calls
from the
her
movie.
Hot Lips. He calls her Hot Lips once when she approaches him looking for Frank.
Okay.
He calls her Hot Lips once.
And the hot lips in the movie is Sally Kellerman, who just died, but she's Rodney Dangerfield's girlfriend in Back to School.
Oh.
Oh,
okay.
nice. I would have never known by the name, so thank you for that.
I figured, yeah. But I always think, whenever I think of her, I don't think of MASH. I think of Back to School, because of course.
Because of Rodney Dangerfield.
Because of the triple Lindy.
Hot Lips then says that those two, they're ruining the war for all of us. Like, war is supposed to be a fun time for everybody.
Fun war.
And the general tells the two that, they're going to be court-martialed. And that they're going to be staying at the location that they're at, and this is where they're going to serve their time. And they're like, yeah, that's a good idea, but like, we can't do that. And you hear the sound of helicopters behind them, and they inform the general about that situation with the Canadians.
No, doesn't radar say they're coming? You don't hear the helicopter.
I think radar does say
He
yeah.
announces it,
Yeah.
but then you hear it right after.
Yeah, there's like a beat, and then you hear it.
Yeah, it was one of those situations again where he just heard it ahead of time, but you did eventually hear it. But yeah, no, they tell him about the Canadian situation and says that, there's going to be a lot of people that are on their way. And if they're under arrest, they're going to be unable to help them. And a lot of those people aren't going to make it without their abilities and the extra hands.
Basically, let us go or let these people die. That's kind of fucked up.
No,
Kind of genius, though.
Leverage.
it's not, but it is. The people will die. He's telling them ahead of time. Like, so in a way, if they don't do that, then yes, the people would have died regardless.
Well, you put them kind of in almost, I don't know, is that a war crime territory? If you just
Yeah.
let the people die? Because
Well, no, it's not like they let him die. If they're locked up, well, no.
right? Like it's
They made themselves the only available doctors by drugging the other surgeon, so he couldn't have helped.
We need to do a crossover episode where we do the first episode of JAG as well, so we understand how the court-martial process works.
Well, I think the issue here is that it's not so much where they rank as far as how good they are at their job. It's more they need all hands on deck, and they can't afford to take two people out of the operation regardless of who they are. But yeah, I mean, the general's in a tough situation right now, right?
yeah, because I mean, it's only really you only really see Hawkeye, Trapper John, Frank, Potter, and that's it. Those are the doctors. You don't really see any other people performing the surgery. Houlihan is a nurse, and all the other people are nurses or orderlies or some kind of support staff. So you just took out half of your surgeons at a field hospital.
I don't, again, I'm not too aware of a lot of the inner workings of the military. So like to see that this whole unit, like from the general down, because even the general's a surgeon. So like, the lieutenant colonel, same thing. It's like they're all surgeons the whole way down and like doctors, and they're all involved in that field. It's not like you just happen to be a doctor within the ward. And I don't know if that's how it always works, but this whole medical unit is, educated in that field from the top down, because they're asking him, like, how are your hands? And they raise his hand up to see, like, as if to say, like, can you assist us in all this? What's going to happen? But then there's they raise his hand and they go, dirty nails, come on.
I was kind of hoping for the Blazing Saddles joke where he's like, steady as a rock. He's like, yeah, but I shoot with this one.
And they do say, you can put us in the clink after. So we get to another hospital scene where they're all working on the patients now. They're all back like in their white scrubs and stuff with the face masks. It is pretty busy, so it's all hands on deck. It was a big incident that happened. And after a few moments of that, we see it must be the following morning, and the general and the lieutenant colonel are heading outside together after like a long night of surgery. And the general says, well, I haven't put a stretch like that in for years. And we get another radar popping up behind Blake out of nowhere. And it's like yes, sir, I've already alerted the general's pilot. He's ready to take off. And that's when Blake says to him, now I want you to alert the general's pilot to be ready to take off at any time. That's an order. So radar, yeah, again, we don't know exactly what it is, if it's intended to be somewhat supernatural or what, but he is always a step ahead.
He's from the future. 100 years in the future, maybe.
Ooh.
Yeah, he came from 2050 to go back in time, yeah.
Imagine being like, it's the year 2050, and I'm going to use my powers to go be a surgeon in the Korean War of 1950.
Well, sometimes you don't get to pick
I guess that's true.
where you end up.
This could be a punishment.
So, so the general says to Blake, those two maniacs are the best surgeons I've ever seen.
Those two maniacs are the best surgeon I've ever seen. He really chews up the scenery who says it.
And he says that that they made him feel like a horse doctor. So make sure you don't lose him. Not even for me. So the not even for me, does that mean like don't even let me take them to be on my own, whatever? But
Correct. respect.
Yeah, don't let me pull them away to my unit, please.
And we get another radar gag where Blake finds out that the general's already ready to leave right now. He's like, oh, I was going to get you a box, and Radar already has the box ready of the general's favorite cigars. Any of you enjoy an occasional cigar?
I do.
They make me sick as fuck. Like, I cannot smoke cigars. It immediately gives me like this crazy nicotine high. It's terrible. And they taste awful. They smell awful. I never understood the appeal. I know a lot of people are into them, but cigars are not my game at all.
As a smoker, anytime I try one, inevitably at some point I inhale a drag.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's part of the problem too. Yeah.
Your brain just thinks you're smoking a cigarette, and then you just want to die. So I just can't do it. I'm trying to quit smoking as it is, but
You also taste it a lot longer than like you would have said.
That's
Yeah.
my thing. So I quit smoking cigarettes forever ago, and then I've been off nicotine as a whole for a long time. But there was a point in time in our like young 20s for a minute where I did enjoy an occasional cigar, and I think just one day I was like, you know what? I actually don't like this. Because they just, they're so hot, especially when you get to that second half.
Everything about it, yeah, is like it's really
it's
oppressive.
not an enjoyable situation.
And
yeah.
that taste just,
I'm the only one that likes it.
I used to, but not anymore, yeah. I used to like it. There was a point where I did enjoy a cigar from time to time.
When you did smoke cigars, what kind did you like to smoke?
I don't know shit about them. So like, I would just like, if it cost $15 or $20, I was like, this must not be terrible,
Okay.
right?
Hey Jay,
Yeah.
before you went out and lit up, did you go cigar?
I was just going to say, I only smoke cigars uniform, and you beat me to it.
In honor of one of the greatest racehorses of all time, Cigar, jockeyed by Jerry Bailey. But no, I don't know. That taste, though, it stays in your mouth for so long. I don't
It's
know,
cigars
that's my
and
deal with it.
cigars, Scotch, and Taco Bell. Somehow you just can't get rid of those tastes in your mouth for like 2 days at a time.
I remember I had a Cuban when we went to what was it, Dominican Republic, and I remember waking up the next day still tasting it. I'm like, oh God.
That's my thing with it, is that you can't shake that taste. So even if you enjoyed it in the moment, a few hours later when I'm trying to eat dinner and I just taste like ash in my mouth, like I'm over this.
That's why you need to do it at night.
To
I
ruin
did it
breakfast.
at night and woke up tasting it the next day.
So you can hate your eggs instead of your meatballs. It just depends on what meal you want to ruin.
Yeah, true. I don't know. I'm a Drew Estate acid cigar blondie guy. They're like $8, like $8 to $10 cigars. Nothing crazy.
I just smoke Philly blunts. Like, I don't make blunts with them. I just smoke them.
If they tasted as good as they smelled, then I would be all about them. They smell so good.
They're like the bar S of cigars.
There's fish in them.
And I'll say, I did used to enjoy like those cigarellos, the Al Capones. Towards the end of my smoking run, was smoking those for a little while.
That's a good point. Actually, you know what I didn't hate was, it's also not their intended purpose. They're meant for weed. But backwoods, like those like hastily rolled ones.
No, if you ask the company backwoods what their intent is of the company, it's not for weed. It just becomes that, and they accept it. and
Well,
they just
yeah,
move on.
I mean that's any of them really, but they were. I would smoke those when I played poker. They weren't like overly harsh or anything, and they do taste really good.
That's why I like the Al Capones.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
The Al Capones were like, because they're smaller, they're more cigarette sized. They don't get super hot like a cigar gets. So you don't. That's the part I don't like,
Yeah.
when it's like overly hot like that.
A big fat, like I'm at the track cigar will increase your body temperature by like a good 45 degrees. It is so awful.
So
You gotta smoke it and talk all old timey though.
That's true.
It's important.
I'm gonna get us some bubblegum ones for an episode that we just do an all-timey episode.
a couple weeks ago, I was in DC for a minute, and we, went up to say hi to Big Lincoln. And when we got to the monument, we're walking around, and like right at the base of it, there was a ton of like half-smoked cigars like all over the ground. It was like, what like guys just were like, let's go to Lincoln Memorial, just smoke cigars, because there were just like a ton of them just all over the ground. I was like, what is this?
I'm not saying nobody cares, but most people that care are like old people that go all the time. That's who smoke cigars, and they don't give a fuck. They throw that shit anywhere.
Nice day. You're sitting on the steps with Abe.
This one's for you. But yeah, so after the general walks off, Hawkeye and Trapper John walk out handcuffed to each other and like, hey, where you going? We're all set.
I thought that was funny.
Yeah.
That was funny, yeah. I do also like, too, that they both try to walk in different directions and get the classic, like, wow, 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 as they get pulled into each other.
Because they were told he was too impressed to have you arrested. And they get into this conversation as they're walking by, like, we did it again. We screwed up in reverse. And playing it off like they wanted to get arrested because they're just trying to get out of there.
I do love that expression though, screwed up in reverse.
And it's like the failing upwards, right?
Yeah.
And
that's it pretty much, right?
Yeah, I mean, that was basically the end of it. Other than that, it was just like you get the shot of them walking off together, and
the helicopter shot we were talking about before, that's just so cool.
They meet up with two girls, and then like the girls like both fork off in different directions, but because they're handcuffed, they're stuck. But then as you watch the helicopter shot that kind of shows you the whole set, they run into two other girls anyways, so I guess, but yeah, there wasn't really anything there. It was just kind of the fade off in a conversation. The dialogue didn't really matter at this point.
And then there's the weird roll call.
That was so weird.
Yeah.
That was very weird.
Expected that at the beginning, if anything.
It was the way it was done. So the episode concludes, and then you get like the still shot at first of the loudspeaker, and the voice of the loudspeaker is announcing everyone that was doing a roll call of everyone on the cast, but announcing their actual names.
Yeah.
To like a credit scene would have, but to hear their real names being vocalized like that on a show is very different than I think anything I've ever seen on any show.
It's the kind of thing they used to do before the show for the studio audience.
Yeah.
When they'd all come out. It's weird to do it at the end of the show on like video, like, and actually air it.
Although I say I've never heard anything like that remotely, but like an hour ago, we're all doing the SNL thing. So I guess that's the only other time where you hear the actual actors' names being announced like that.
It's different. That's a variety show.
John Lovitz.
I don't know if you guys are like big into war movies or anything. I really love war stuff. But in the Dirty Dozen, which is a pretty famous classic movie, right? When they go through the actual dozen guys and explain who they are and what they do, it's very similar to this scene. And that movie was probably, I don't know, 8 years before this. So I wonder if there's even like a little bit of, probably not intentional, but like just sunk into their brain from seeing that when they wrote this.
Yeah, it could be a little bit of that in there.
I mean, this is kind of a parody in a way of war, and it's showing that there is kind of a funny side, not like slapstick sort of like Hogan's Heroes or something, but it's a comical take on war, but a realistically comical take on war.
It almost feels a little bit like The Great Escape, where The Great Escape has a big ensemble cast and it's funny, but then there's also the high stakes part of they're trying to escape and people are getting killed. So there's like weird levity to it as well. So, but again, there's so much of this stuff happening at the time, right? Like this is an age of a lot of war TV shows, a lot of war movies, and we're in a war currently. You're in Vietnam, you're 10 years from Korea and 20 years from, World War II and 40 from World War I. Like it's just so present in the culture of the time.
Yeah, so with all that being said, I don't know if there's anything else you guys wanted to touch on in regards to the show. I don't have a lot else because I don't know much about the show because it's the first time I've seen it. But if no one else has anything to say, we'll go into the green light or cancel. Anybody?
One thing. Not so much about the pilot, but the finale of this show was one of the most watched television episodes of all time.
Was everyone just dying to see it end?
No, it was an insanely popular show.
It shows them going to 11 seasons if no one likes it.
We've seen that before too. Like when Seinfeld, the last episode of Seinfeld, where people were in Times Square watching it on the big screen. I feel like MASH was very famous.
Imagine waiting outside all day to be that disappointed.
Yeah, I hope the last episode of MASH is better than the last episode of Seinfeld, and I love Seinfeld.
No, MASH is beloved, and we're gonna get a lot of shit for bashing it as much as we have.
I don't think we're going to, because we're not bashing the show. We're bashing this episode, and this episode has a lot to answer for. You know what I mean?
And I wouldn't even say we're bashing like the episode as a whole, just some of the more outdated things that just don't work modern day anymore. It wasn't really a bash on like if we were analyzing that in 1972 versus in 2022. It just some of those things just changed a little bit.
Yeah, true.
Well, then I think that's it.
That's all I got.
Yeah. All right. So let's get right into the green light or cancel. I'll go in the order I see you in, which typically is the order at which we join the Zoom call. So Gordo, starting with you.
I'm going to greenlight it. As I said, this is one of my favorite shows of all time. There is, and I'm not looking ahead and and using my bias of the show for this. I think it's generally a smart sitcom, and there's enough there that's serious and there's enough comedy there that just makes you intrigued and want to see more. So generally that's my reason for greenlighting this. So green light from me.
Nick.
I know this show gets better. I've seen episodes, down the line. How could you not? Well, Jay didn't, which is strange to me. But I know it does get better. It lasted a long time. This pilot really did not do it for me, though. I found myself overwhelmed by the amount of characters, and you just kind of get thrown into it. Don't get me wrong. There are obvious funny aspects of this show that I did enjoy. It's not, a garbage show by any means. But at the end of this episode, I really didn't feel enticed to keep watching for one reason or the other. I was kind of on the fence about this one, greenlight or cancel. But at the end of it, I kind of just had to lead towards cancel. I would say most of that is just from the age of the show not translating very well today. And getting to know the characters more helps it, which you don't really get to do in the first episode of any show. I'm sure if I kept watching, I would get more attached to it, but as the first episode alone stands, I am canceling it. I did not have a ton of I did not have a ton of fun watching it.
Ferg.
Yeah, it's gonna be a cancel from me as well. Show brought me no joy whatsoever. I was bored for most of it. I try to, give stuff the benefit of the doubt, different time, stuff like that, but I didn't like it. And it's a rare show that it ended, and I had zero urge to continue on. And I've watched the bad shows continued on. I finished Country Comfort. I didn't like it when I was a kid, and I thought maybe as an adult I would, and no, it's still boring. So yeah, cancel for me.
Joe.
I'm with Nick on this one. It's hard to not remember the episodes I've seen, and I do like those episodes, right? And I love stuff of this generation. I love old war stuff. It's really right in my wheelhouse. And this is not based on MASH as a whole, but I just can't greenlight a show where they offer to sell a guy named... I just can't do it. I gotta not greenlight this one. That was fucking wild, and I'm still laughing about how insane that was.
Well, so my vote is pointless because we are already at 3 no's. But I'm actually with Gordo. I'm going to greenlight this one. And I walked in. I knew nothing. I mean, I knew how big the show was, right? But I knew nothing of it. I didn't know how it was formatted, anything like that. The general humor of it. There's a couple things that as we started the greenlight or cancel process, I wish I brought up earlier, throughout the episode. First of which, I really love the way it was shot. I thought it was shot really nice. Visually, great. I think for a pilot episode, this show seemed so put together already and so everyone was in their place. I was very impressed by that. It really didn't feel like the first episode of a show. And I'm someone who I do not have a lot of interest in history and timepiece stuff. I'm not big on war stuff at all. And this it captured my interest. And I think that's because of what I said earlier. By using the medical unit aspect of it and focusing on the fact that it's all more hospital based and not so much combat based, really kept me more interested because it didn't feel too military for me. But I don't know, having never seen it and seeing this episode for the first time, it just wasn't what I expected to see. But I was entertained watching it. I thought there was some funny lines. And I think it's an easy watch. If this was one of those Nick at Night type shows when we were kids, I could have seen myself just kind of marathoning it, on any given night. So so green light for me. So but again, sorry to MASH, one of the most beloved long running shows of all time. You do not get episode 2 from us because only 2 out of 5 greenlit you. So that's the end of the road for you guys.
Suck it, MASH.
I will say as a parting thing though, and again, I don't dislike MASH. I just don't like this episode. Now I haven't seen it in so long, and this is always on, to Gordo's point, that I'm like, oh, if MASH is on now, I feel I'm more inclined after this watching to be like, I'll watch MASH.
Yeah, I can see myself watching a few. This seems like an easy laying in bed show.
Well, the other thing too with this show, not to make this episode go on much longer than it has to, is each kind of episode is in its own little world. You don't need to, there's very few episodes that are to be continued.
Yeah, The Office is set up the same way.
So yeah, I mean, that kind of lends
Always
itself.
jump in, yeah.
You can just jump in. It can play random episodes from random seasons and it won't won't miss a beat.
Yeah, you're not gonna have like an issue with the continuity on the story or whatever. Yeah.
But yeah, let's just to wrap everything up, guys, S1E1pod.com. I really need to stress it more throughout the episode, but S1E1pod.com, that's where you can find all the links everywhere where you can give us a listen, everywhere to follow us on social media, Twitter, Instagram, S1E1pod. Interact with us, give us a follow, spread the word, tell your friends about us. We do appreciate it a great deal. Always enjoy hearing from you guys when you reach out to us. We like hearing your ideas. So hit us up. But yeah, S1E1pod.com. Also, don't be afraid to leave a comment on Apple. Those are great for us too. We haven't gotten one of those in a little bit. So if someone can leave a nice review and kick up those stars, that'd be great. But yeah, that's all we have for this week, guys. Thank you every week for listening to us. Happy Memorial Day. Sorry that we had to cancel the military themed show we did for it. But that's it. That's all the time we have this week. Thank you. Goodbye.
I think we got the best hoe, John.
Hot dog.
Go team!